Joining us now is Fiona Hill. She was the U.S. government's top intelligence officer on Russia during the Georgia conflict in 2008. She's currently the director of the Center on the United States and Europe at the Brookings Institution. Ms. Hill, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on American politicians fighting with each other on this, but should we be looking at Russia's actions toward Georgia as an instructive parallel here? Do you see any similar dynamics at work?
There are lots of very similar dynamics at work here too, and I have to say that actually the Bush administration did come under a lot of criticism for the handling of Georgia as well. And also that was in large part because we had very limited levers at our disposal back then in 2008 too to try to change Russian behaviour. The issue of military response was off the table. The United States started to think about sanctions. They started to think about other things that they could do, visa suspensions, targeting the assets of Russian individuals, separating off deals that we'd already been made with Russian companies. And there was an awful lot of very strong rhetoric coming out, as you've pointed out yourself, out of Congress, Senator McCain, many other people making very strong statements. And it didn't have any impact whatsoever on changing the Russian decision-making on the ground. So there's one parallel. And also, it's really the sequence of events of the Russian government perceiving a threat to Russian speakers, to Russian citizens on the ground, seeing a pretext there in terms of Georgian action against people in South Ossetia who were basically threatening Georgian interests, and then the Russians moving in defense of their interests and of their compatriots or their citizens on the ground. So we're in a very similar situation here. The one big difference, of course, is that Abkhazia and South Ossetia were part of the Republic of Georgia, and we're also always pretty much part of that territory. Well, we're talking here about Crimea, where it does seem that the Russians are at least laying the groundwork for some kind of legal case to suggest that perhaps Crimea could at some juncture become part of the Russian Federation again. So there really is a distinction there. But we've been there before. We've been there before with Vladimir Putin. And frankly, we've been in very similar situations in the past, as you've just laid out, since the 1990s, on a great deal of trouble over Crimea, over Ukraine, over the disposition of many of the states that have emerged out of the Soviet Union.
In terms of the motivations here on the Russian side, if the Russian Federation does decide to stay in Crimea on a permanent basis, and as you say, maybe even make a case for annexing Crimea or reversing the gift that Crimea was made by Khrushchev in 1954, taking it back, do you think that means that they wouldn't have designs on a broader push into eastern Ukraine? Do you think this is a contained threat within Crimea specifically?
I don't think it's a contained threat right now at all. I do think that Russia intends to stay put in Crimea now, just as it has done in Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and in many other similar situations around the Russian periphery. There's a great deal of interest in Crimea for all the reasons you've laid out. But they have given themselves a degree of possibility. Putin got an approval from the Russian Federation Council, in fact, to take action elsewhere in the territory of Ukraine. So right now, there really is a real risk that the Russians may deem it necessary to protect interests in other places. And we've got an idea, right now, that might be in some of the cities in eastern Ukraine, like Donetsk or Kharkiv, where, again, there is a large, compact population of Russian speakers and people who at least can be deemed to have some kind of preference for staying in close association with Russia. So I don't think we're out of the woods yet, and I think we're going to be playing with this issue. There's going to be lots more sports metaphors. There's going to be a lot more pressure put on President Obama to basically step up and meet Vladimir Putin head on. We're going to be in this for quite a long time. Putin means business. He's got vested interests here, a long history in this region, and there's been a lot of pressure for some time inside of Russia itself, the Russian parliament, and many people within Russia for Moscow itself to take more concerted action.
Sobering, very sobering take on that. Fiona Hill, former intelligence officer for Russia and Eurasia at the National Intelligence Council, now at the Brookings Institution. Thank you very much for your time tonight. It's very helpful to get your take on it.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you.
All right, lots more ahead. Stay with us.